Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Well, my name is Elder. Welcome back to the Open Debate. We're going to be talking about a few hard discussions this evening, sending thoughts and prayers to Ukraine. What good does virtue signaling do? The questions that are on the board, interesting. I'd love to know what your opinions are. If you'd like to hop in and talk about it, feel free to pop into the chat, hit the multi-guest button, the co-host button, and we will bring you on in to hear what you have to say. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can always hit up the PayPal up there at Open the Debate, or just voice your opinion down here below in the comments. Share this stream with anybody who you believe may have an alternate opinion and would be willing to discuss things. That's what we're all about. We want to get the voices and opinions of real individuals who are all out in the world. I'm just chilling in some relaxed wear, wearing this wolf sweater as always, and just some sweatpants, relaxing. It's 9 o'clock here in Ontario, and yeah, my cat's back out in the living room making some noise because he is a weirdo and makes weird noises. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking, what you're feeling. If you'd like to pop in, make sure to hit the co-host button, request to join, and it would be amazing to hear what you're thinking. Uh, yeah, guys, I appreciate you all being here. This is the Open Debate. My name is Elder. This is a place for individuals to come and speak their mind. I saw people asking that in other comment sections. It's not even a joke. Yeah, guys, come on in and speak your mind. Hit the co-host button if you'd like to request to join. You can always come on in and have your opinion heard. This is what this channel is all about. It's not just my opinion. It's not just me spouting off what I feel and what I think. It's about having individuals come on with different opinions and talking it out together and learning where we come from. So, if you'd like to be one of those people, make sure to hit the co-host button down below. Looks just like that. Request to join and come on in, guys. It'll be fun. It'll be a nice time. I would appreciate hearing your voices. Sometimes individuals are not super eager to get into the chat and have their voices heard, but once one person does, more people string along. They come along and they want to actually talk about things. So as soon as we get somebody in the chat, I'm sure that we will, we will have a good conversation. Mystic Blue in there. You're almost at that 1,000. I'd love to have you in the chat and we could actually have a good long conversation about universal income. At this point, it would just be me giving you my opinion, and not everybody wants to people's opinions are. That's not the point of this channel. You can listen to podcasts all day and all night, but this is a place for conversation. It's not just for me to give you what my opinion is without any backlash or any pushback. Dusty, thanks for joining us on the Open Debate. How you doing?
I don't know. Is my mic working today?
Yeah, things were a little weird yesterday, eh?
Well, I kept trying to talk last night and I couldn't figure out why everyone was just talking over me.
Yeah,
Apparently, my mic wasn't working for like an hour.
yeah. At a certain point, everyone's like, Dusty's trying to say stuff. We're like, Dusty, you haven't been saying anything. Oh, I guess he's not there. I guess he has,
No,
but he's not coming through.
no, my phone screwed up last night and I had to. I think when the battery gets to a certain level, it just cuts half the function off because it seemed to have done that the other night too. So,
Last night was particularly egregious with the malfunctions that happened in the stream. The fact that Klutz got booted, and then after she was booted, nobody was able to join for like 10 minutes. That was a strange thing. That's never happened before.
yeah, last night was definitely strange, but we were talking about very controversial things. So,
At the time, that's the thing. It's because whenever there's a hot topic, that's what's going on in like the atmosphere, I guess. But when you're looking at like algorithms, this information isn't really new. There's new information that has come out with it, but there has been some reports. So yeah, it's a question around what can you actually talk about and what can you not talk about. There are things that it seems like, as mundane as they may be, they are flagged. But perhaps that's just oversensitivity and just being a little bit, what is the word? paranoid, I guess you could say, and attributing those things to what has happened. It could have just been a malfunction. Maybe
Yeah.
TikTok was fucking up for everybody yesterday.
Yeah, but with the amount of censorship we've seen over the last 2 years, it's hard not to be paranoid when something like that happens at that kind of a timing, right?
Yeah, where we've talked about other sensitive things before as well, but nothing that is um, has been backed up that hard with evidence that we're analyzing.
Yeah.
It was strange.
But yeah, no, you guys were talking about the genders last night, and I really had some stuff to say about it because I don't understand any of that stuff. And Neuro seemed to have a lot to say about it, like she's on the other side. So I was really wanted to pick her brain so I could try to get an understanding because to me, none of it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the I there's two genders and that's genders and the pronouns thing where people want me to call them words that don't actually they're not they're just made up words. It's like just like you said, tell me your name, I'll call you by your name. I'm happy to do that, but don't make me try to reshape my reality and my perception on the world just to make you feel better.
Yeah. Okay, well give me 2 seconds and if this pauses, I'll be right back and I'll change the background. I'll change the background and then I'll bring Neuro in and we'll continue that conversation. And
Is she in here already?
all right, I'm back. That took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to, but I am back. Um, let's see what's up. Oh no. Life. Life, guys. We'll be back. We'll be doing this. So I want to make things apparent for individuals who are coming in. Hey, okay, we're here. We're here. We're back, and round two of the open debate. What we're going to be talking about tonight now: what is gender? What is an ally? Are you pro LGBTQ AI2 plus? And get us away from all this other, crazy talk. So I'm going to bring Dusty and Nero in both, and they both have different opinions. I like to have them be able to have a discussion together and be able to come to maybe not a conclusion, but be able to give each other their rationalization around why they believe the things that they believe. And we're going to start with Dusty because Nero's here once again, and you can outline your position, what you feel or what you don't understand or what you don't agree with, and then she can give you her position and around why she believes the things that she believes. As you said, you think that she does believe differently because she had the floor last night when you weren't able to speak. And
Yeah.
so I'll give you the floor to voice your opinion, and then we'll bring Nero in to voice her opinion and give her side of the story.
So yeah, like I was saying before, uh, I don't understand the whole 72 genders thing. I don't. There, to me, there's two genders. There's male, female, and when you're talking about people who are transgender, that literally means you go from one gender to the other gender, right? You transition from one to the other. This all these labels, the polygender and pangender, and I mean, there's one that's like gender blender. That one to me sounds like kitchen equipment, not even like all sound so made up and so just just weird to me. I don't understand them. And then they talk about how their gender can change throughout the day. Like none of this in my brain makes any sense. You're either one or the other, and you're that. And I sat down with one of my ex-girlfriend's friends one time who was a female to male, went through everything, now very much is a looks like a guy, talks like a guy, acts like a guy, right? Very much a guy. And I called James James because that's James's name. That's what James has always been. And I asked James, like, what is going on with all this stuff? And even James is like, there's just two genders. There's male and female, which is where the right. But then you see all these TikToks of people that are like they're wearing bracelets and going, you can tell what gender I am today by my bracelet. Like to me, that sounds like mental disorder. It does not sound like science or biology. That's where my brain's at, and that's why I don't understand it. It's just it doesn't make sense to me.
All right, Nero, do you have thoughts? Would you like to give your point of view to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I identify as just a cis woman. So I mean, I don't, have personal experience, lived experience, or anything like that. But I do have friends who are non-binary. I do have friends who are trans. I do have, so I have like a very brief understanding. So I wouldn't say I'm an expert or anything like that. However, I do think it does happen in nature quite often. Like we see, when people bring up biology and animals, I'm like, okay, so what about a seahorse? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, they can go from male to female. Now, is it rare? Yes. But also a human can be born with two sets of genitalia. A human can be born with different sets of chromosomes. They've already proven it. So it does happen. It is a real thing. And in science, they even say there's up to six genders because of that, because of the chromosomal possibilities. Is it common? Probably not, but it does happen. And then as far as the mental and psychological side, there is absolutely body dysmorphia. That's a real thing. It is a condition. I don't think anybody should be ridiculed for it, but also that might understand like the more psychological aspect of it, because there's even with people with eating disorders or things like that, have like a strong hatred towards their body or whatever the feeling is, or it might just be as a coping mechanism gone awry. You know what I mean? So like there's multiple things that kind of like play in. There's social, there's scientific that could potentially, and then there's also mental. So it's like multiple different things could factor into that.
Okay, and I understand what when you're saying about the chromosomes and you know people who are born with I'm trying to think of the term. What is it?
Hermaphrodite.
Hermaphroditia. Yeah. When they're born as a with those conditions, but those are literally listed as genetic abnormalities. Not they're not actually their own specific class of gender. When you talk about gender, gender is the two genders that are required for uh, reproduction. You need a male, you need a female for reproduction. Two women cannot have a baby, and two men cannot have a baby, right? You have to have one of each gender in order to have all the building blocks to form a new life. So you when they say that, my wife my wife and my husband is having a baby. I heard this one today that her husband was having a baby. I'm like, that's a wife. A wife has a baby. Women have babies. They have the organs, they're designed for it. Men don't. I can never have a baby because I am not a woman. I'm not built to have a baby. So to say that you're a man but you're having a baby is just throwing the science right out the window because it's just not biologically possible. And this is where I start getting confused. And you talked about body dysmorphia, and that's that's a mental condition. We used to
Correct.
treat that with therapy. When it comes to eating disorders, you treat that with therapy. You don't play into the role and validate the disorder. You treat it. You try to cure it. And in some cases, the body dysmorphia is only cured by the gender transition surgeries. But in right now, there's like 20% of people that were surveyed in the Gen X, or not Gen X, Gen Z group that identify as transgender or some other gender than the one they're born with, and that's up 10 times from the baby boomers, and they were at 2% identified in such a way. So why do we have such this uptick of people thinking that they're transgender, but they only say they're transgender? They don't actually do any of the things to become transgender. And I'm not
Okay.
saying transgender people don't exist, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously they do, but to have a 20% or a 10% spike in the number of people identifying in such a way seems more of a almost a mass delusion than it does in actual condition.
And so before we go on, Meg asked in the chat, where are you getting those stats from? Like, where did you get that information from?
That one was actually from Jordan Peterson talking about it in a study. Uh, I was listening to him last week and he was talking about the same topic. And
Yeah, and I think that
it,
that's a good thing for like everybody to realize when people ask things like that, like you don't have to have the exact study, you don't have to have the exact like statistics yourself. As long as you just can say where did you get the information from? You watched a video of Jordan Peterson breaking down a study
and
that was
that,
talking about this exact topic. So
yeah.
that's where you got the information from. So like this is what the whole point of the channel is, to build and to learn how people are gathering their information, how we build, how we are informed as citizens, and how we come to the conclusions that we come to, right? And so I think
Yeah. And
personally that's a really good piece of information. Like, where did you come to
and
that? Like, how did you come to the conclusion?
and the videos on YouTube of him talking about it, anybody can watch it. So,
Okay.
but that's where
Well, did
those numbers came from.
okay. I was gonna say, did you want me to like at least respond from what I've learned or at least what I've heard
Oh,
from
absolutely.
people who have it?
Oh,
Well,
hundred
the
percent.
other,
Like I want,
uh,
yeah, I was just
yeah,
gonna say, I want this to keep going back between you two. I'm
of
just gonna like
course.
interject with little things that I find interesting or that I want to like keep the conversation going. But I know that you two, you're coming from different points of views, and I'd like to just have a good conversation here. And I think that you two are doing it well, right?
Good. I'm just bad with timing, as you could tell, because there's times where I accidentally interrupt people. So I'm always like cautious because I don't want to do that, believe it or not. But it accidentally happens because my timing is garbage with my ADHD. But um, what I was gonna say is, I do think that we are seeing more cases, but theoretically, with any kind of condition, whether it's physical, mental, we see more conditions as time goes on. Autism, people are like, why is autism on the rise? Why is ADHD on the rise? Why is this on the rise? Why is this cancer on the rise? Why is that on the rise? And part of it can be due to more population. Part of it can be due to more people being aware of it. It could be due to doctors saying, hey, this is a real thing. Or their parents saying and being supportive instead of going, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm going to send you to a conversion camp, which is what they used to do, quite honestly, which was actually awful. They did that for autistic children, gay children, like anybody who was different from society would get sent to like conversion camps and things like that, at least in the US. I don't know how you guys are, there, which is actually highly abusive, believe it or not, the conversion camps, unfortunately. But not saying that, there's an alternate method to deal with those situations, but it's certainly not conversion camps. But the whole thing is with the gender thing too. I've also spoken to some people who consider themselves non-binary. And I said, well, what about you feels non-binary? And they said, well, I don't really feel like I associate myself much with having the personality of a female or male based on society standards of what a female or male is, which I can relate to that because I think that we all have different qualities and it's not naturally tied to a certain gender. I don't agree that gender has to do with personality traits or interests or I don't like people in society putting themselves in boxes. Like, you're a girl, you should do this. You're a boy, you should like blue. I think that's silly. That's social conditioning. So I think for the other position, a lot of people are getting away from the labels because they feel that there's and I've noticed even a lot of men even going non-binary because they said, I'm sick of, the mental health issues that comes with being a man or the perception of men and what we do in society that we cause most of the world's, assaults and murders. I don't want to be associated with that anymore. I'm tired of the toxicity. So they feel it's toxic. I'm not saying that I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that's the perception, I believe. And so they want to not be put in a box with everyone else. They want their own box and where they kind of can be left alone, which a lot of people might get upset about, which I can understand it. Because if they're coming after you and going you have to do this or I'm going to sue you, I'm going to attack you. Okay, sure. I can understand why somebody would be like, no, don't do that to me. Right? Because I've heard somebody say that they'll actually get very upset if you misgender. I haven't had that experience myself, but I don't doubt that somebody wouldn't get super upset or take it personally occasionally, because as humans we all have our issues where we take things sometimes too far personally. But I've accidentally misgendered people before and felt terrible, but luckily they were very understanding and they're like, okay, you made a mistake, because I don't do it on purpose. To me, and then there's some that do it on purpose. You'll see them join lives, and we were talking about this last night, and you've seen people join other people's lives where yes, they have it in the heading this is my gender, and they look differently to the eye. And so some people will go in there and troll them and try to
I
go
disagree,
after them.
though. I'm not trying to stop you from talking, but I disagree with that, with not your premise, but I disagree with those people who are doing those lives and the premise around what they're trying to do and them acting like victims. If I was to put up here right now, I don't have a beard right now, but if I did, well, I have some stubble either way. And even with this, if I was to put up right now, pronouns she, her, I am a woman, and then with the rest of these things, maybe without the open debate, because that's clearly my channel's about debating. But if I was to pose those questions with me being here right now, openly, actively looking for a conversation, and then people come in and disagree with you, they play the victim as if that's not the reaction they're looking for. It's clear and very obvious that 99% of those people, you want to go and have a live and not be berated for your gender, don't make it the topic of discussion. Say, I like to do this, or we're talking about this today, and then if people are coming in there and attacking you because you want to be whoever you are, that's on them. Then for 100%, they're in the wrong. But if you're going to say, I am this, what are your thoughts on this? Talk to me about it. It's okay, you just put yourself out there, and you want yourself, your gender, and your identity to be the topic of discussion. So there are people that agree and disagree, and out there, and you want this discussion to happen. If you don't want to be talking about it and you don't want to be invalidated, then don't put yourself out there, because you're not just going to get validation on the internet from anybody, no matter what you do. You can post a picture of a cute puppy, and you're not going to just get validation. So that's clearly not the purpose, right? So don't play the victim when you're asking for that conversation.
Well, I've heard it in multiple senses, though, too.
I just want to point out, if you're going live and not talking about hard topics or hard conversations, and you're just saying, I like cars, I'm a man. Like, you don't even say that you're a man. You're just like, I like cars, and then people are like, you're a woman, and like, you're not a man. It's like, okay, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Don't attack the person for that. But if they're
Exactly.
gonna make it the conversation, they're open. And I'm sorry, they play the victim all day and all night here on TikTok, pretending like they're not open for the conversation and that like, people are attacking them. But that is the conversation that they're trying to have.
Yeah.
Well, true. It is difficult. I get as a societal standpoint that yes, that would open them up to that kind of ridicule and things like that. I do agree with that from a sociological standpoint, but maybe in their hearts and in their heads, they're like, we've changed so much as a society. No one's going to do that anymore. And then it's like they get slammed down. So it might be like naivety or just emotional immaturity on that person's behalf. Maybe they're hopeful that that's not going to happen, or maybe they are doing it as a show. I have no idea, but
Well,
it's probably unique person to person. But I've seen even lives where like I've seen like where a man said, you know, who has more self-discipline, men or women? And then every time somebody joined and said women, he would berate them, laugh in their face, and disconnect them. A grown man, and he'd be like, "Don't
That's
you
the
be
same
telling me
thing.
what to do?"
yeah.
Exactly.
That's the
So like
exact
I've
same
seen it
thing,
across
yeah.
the board here, like
Well,
in multiple rooms. That's why I love it here because we can actually talk.
Right?
well, I was watching one this just earlier today because I finished work early, and there was same thing, just like you described. They had let's talk about trans and their pronouns in the thing, and this person was talking to two other people. One person wasn't really doing any talking. The other person was trying to talk to them about, you know, the gendered bathrooms and neutral bathrooms and things like that. And all the host kept saying was, "You're not trans, you don't get an opinion." And I'm like, "But you've just put it on the top of your thing to have people talk to you to to discuss these things. Like it's right there, but you don't want to hear what other people who have a differing opinion from you want to say. What you want to hear is that your personal views are validated over and over and over in in the channel, and
Hmm.
I don't think that's healthy for anybody. Like you were talking
Well, like,
about the men not wanting to be men because of the toxic label attached to men. Well, saying that you're non-binary doesn't change the fact that you are genetically a man, and the traits that are associated with men being aggressive and that are associated with the violent tendencies that we may have, the strength, all of these things, those are base biology determined by things like our testosterone levels, and it's been studied and researched and shown that men with high levels of testosterone are more aggressive. So unless you're doing something to lower your testosterone, you still have the tendency to produce excess testosterone and to be aggressive. It's not going to change just because you changed what you your self identity, and that's what it really is. It's a self identity because if you walk out into a store, let's say I'll use me as an example. I got my 5 o'clock shadow going on. I got broad shoulders. I got the good old beer belly going on because I don't take too good a care of myself as I should. But everyone's gonna look at me and be like, "That's a guy. That
Hmm.
is definitely a guy. Like it looks like a guy. It walks like a guy. It talks like a guy. That's a guy."
Hmm.
They're never. They're not gonna be like, "Oh, I should ask him if he's a guy,"
Hmm.
because that's not how we're wired. That's not how society has functioned for the dawn of time. You look at somebody, you predetermine what they are, and that determines how you interact with them.
Hmm.
So calling myself a girl, but
Hmm.
looking exactly as I do right now, not only confuses people, but it's not projecting the image you want to project. And someone said this, I heard not too long ago, that if you aren't projecting the image that you want to project, then you're not doing a good job of getting people to see what you see. I I know I really screwed up that, but you get the idea.
So I
Yeah.
have to interject and just say like two things that they do agree and also their questions. So it's like in the first part, with that being said, with not being able to go into certain streams, like you yourself here on this stream tonight, we're having a conversation. There are people listening to it, and there are certain individuals. Nobody here is speaking that is trans or that has to deal with that. It would be nice if there was somebody that was speaking that was open about it. But the point is that everybody wants to learn and wants to understand what's going on, and the fact that you, Dusty, are the one that is quote unquote opposed to the idea, and then Neuro is for. If this was like a pro and against
Yeah.
debate, like just black and white, um, you went in actively on your own to another debate earlier and listened to individuals speaking, somebody who proclaimed to be trans, to learn. And the fact that you weren't able to hear an actual conversation stopped your education in its tracks and continued to keep you inside of your own echo chamber in the beliefs that you have, because those beliefs were never pushed. You couldn't hear somebody like push back the ideas that perhaps you'd never thought about before. And it is a real shame the fact that people aren't open to having those discussions regardless of what it is, because that only furthers individuals into their own beliefs, where it sounds like if you want to take things black and white, you're against, she's for, but you're not even against. You're here to educate. You're here to learn. You have your opinions and you're allowed to have your opinions. The fact that people aren't allowed to believe things anymore is the problem, and it stops progression. Like real progressives are looking to learn what society is, learn about life around them, and how we can move forward in the best possible nature. But that starting point of learning what is actually going on is where we've kind of lost the ball, and it's a sad thing to think of, in my
It
opinion.
is.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, when all I want to do is get somebody to explain it to me, and hopefully, you know, maybe nothing, maybe I don't change my view, maybe I do, but at least I have more information on what the whole thing is about, because I'm not against people being who they want to be. I don't I don't personally care if you want to call yourself a hamburger. Go nuts. It doesn't
Hmm.
affect me what you call yourself. What what I don't understand is why I have to play into that game when I myself don't believe it, right? When I believe
Okay.
something else, why do I have to change how I view the world so that someone else feels comfortable?
Well,
Especially
think I
with
can
this.
explain.
I want you to respond, Nero, because that is a good question. But I just want to add on to the question: why does somebody have to believe what you believe in your point of view of the world if they are willing to not go out of their way to offend you in your beliefs? And so, like
Mm-hmm.
Islam, Islam, I completely disagree with the religion of Islam itself, but there's nothing wrong with Muslim people or individuals who believe in that religion. You can believe whatever you want. That's my whole thing. I love the individuals who go out of their way to learn about what they believe, and that's their thing. That's what they firmly believe. That's what they love. So that's on you. That's good. Good for you. But I do not like it myself. I don't go to my way to offend anybody. It's a different religion than mine. I don't have to believe that religion. And so, as long as I don't actively work against these individuals for doing what they think is right, why do I have to believe in their worldview? And
Well,
so, like, just to add that.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can understand what you mean. So their worldview, and I agree. Technically, nobody physically has to do anything, right? As humans, but my whole thing is, even though I may not understand it fully, it doesn't hurt me at all to just respect what somebody wants to be called, assuming that they've told me first. So, first step is they should tell you first. If they don't tell you first, they can't really get mad at you for misgendering them, because that's on them. Because if you're born a different gender, you should tell someone first, if you want to be called by that name, that gender, whatever. But as far as getting very upset about it, there is a long history of trans people killing themselves, unfortunately, having a lot of depression. And so, like, when you misgender, it's almost like painful because in their mind, they see themselves differently. And there are some people who are trans who've had surgeries who I can't tell the difference, certainly, between what they were born as and what they are now. Cause they literally, like, some are the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And I'm just like, wait, what? And then beautiful men. So, like, there are people that, like, you legit would never know, unless they disclose that to you. Like, if they're walking down the street, there are some people you wouldn't be able to tell what they were biologically born as. And then there are other people who haven't had surgeries who just feel that way internally, identify more as male or female. I don't really identify, I guess I don't really care about gender labels because to me, I do feel gender is kind of a social construct, but what makes us different is our sex. Sex, there's male and female. And then there are people who are hermaphrodites or who have extra chromosomes, things like that. But gender is generally, boy, girl. And that's where you get the stereotypes. The girls like pink, the boys like blue. If you're a girl, you don't play sports. You know what I mean? So I think gender is more of a social construct, but the sex, that's where people get very upset or confused. Because yes,
But
there is
gender,
some rare stuff with chromosomes and stuff like that. So
then gender is male female. It as until
Okay,
a few
okay.
years
I wanna
ago.
I don't wanna cut you off, but like I'm gonna bring White Coat into the conversation as well. And depending on
Hmm.
his point of view, I will play devil's advocate and try to push a little bit harder on either one of the sides. But one thing that I would like to say before he comes in and pose the question is if um, if gender is a point of view, right? If it's like a construct of society, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to pose this question similar to the idea of being offended, and this is kind of the two sides I think that get conflicted. So there are certain individuals that believe that whatever you decide your gender is, that's what you are, and then there's another side where it's like, okay, sorry, I have not described this very well. Okay, I will break it down from here forward. Individuals who you can either be offended, you can take offense, right? But you can be offended, but I cannot offend you. It's a social construct. It's something that you are socially wired to do. In the same sense, gender is a social construct. It's something that you don't choose for yourself. You can't just go around. I can't just go around saying that I'm a girl. When I walk out of this house and I walk into society, I am the social construct of society is going to gender me. They're going to look at me as a society and say, this is how you appear, this is what you are to me. And that doesn't mean that because we've talked about it's the breaking of those gender norms. So it's almost an act of rebellion, as though because they say girls only do this. Well, no, that's just a stereotype. It's just to broadly put people into a category. Because you appear as a woman, women naturally do this, but not all women. And then men, not all men. And so it's not something that you put on yourself. You may be androgynous. You may do like you may do. I don't know. You may have no. You could be completely bald, wearing baggy clothes, all this stuff. Sometimes women still appear as women, and society will look at you as a woman, and that's where you have the issues of being misgendered. And then that whole issue again. It's like, how do we get people the best hope? But I just wanted to like pose that question. But like you said, it's a societal construct, and so with that being said, it's not really on you. It is a societal thing that we project onto other people, and that's why it is sad. Like Dusty said, um, you know, he's a man. He's got broad shoulders, 5 o'clock shadow. He goes up to the store. He's going to be called a man. So if he felt like he was a woman, a lot of times, whether you if you go through a lot of like medical changes, hormones, and all this sort of surgery and stuff, yes, you can appear more woman-like, but don't pretend to try to tell me that Caitlyn Jenner looks like a woman. And that person's rich. They have all the money in the world. They're supposed to be the poster child for transitions. That's a man, like in their appearance. And so it's hard for people that have that natural build. If that's the way that they truly feel, it sucks. Like Dusty said, it's an appearance thing. It's a societal thing, like I said. And so for those people, that sucks. You gotta admit, you have to at least say that like if you truly felt like a woman and you could not appear that way, and the society always is going to identify you as a man, that would be hard.
So I was Meg Mucklebones in the It was saying that it was what she was talking about was gender identity, not gender. But when everyone keeps talking, they keep saying that gender is a social construct. Wouldn't gender roles be the social construct? Gender is gender, but gender roles are what society forces their ideals onto people, and those are what we can change is the gender roles. Like again, like I said, I'm just trying to understand because my brain explodes when I try to figure this out on my own. But when we're talking about gender on my birth certificate, it doesn't say sex, it says gender. My gender is male. My sister's gender is female, right? It doesn't tell me anything about my gender identity on my birth certificate. It just says what I am. Biologically, I am a male. And as I grew up, I probably did take more masculine road than I would have possibly taken had nobody pushed the gender roles onto me. But my parents didn't force me to be who I am, and they would have loved me no matter what I became, like very open family. So when people keep saying that gender is fluid, I don't understand how something that is based, that is, we're born exactly with that gender, how that can be fluid. Your identity could be fluid, absolutely. Every day you could feel some a different way, but that doesn't, in, for me, that doesn't make you that automatically. You can't say you're a boy today and a girl tomorrow and say that that's your gender. That's what you are to your core. That's just how you feel, and everyone's feelings are valid. But there's a difference between the science behind chromosomes and DNA and all of that, and what society molds people into as they age.
Well, that's true, but I will say, my response to that is yes, you can't change your full out DNA. You can't replace every single chromosome in your body. And I don't think anybody's arguing that. Like, even people who are in the trans community will say, I was a female at birth or I was a male at birth, but now I identify as this. They say, I identify as. And they just say, can you respect that and call me that name? Now, I will say that obviously, as a human, you have a choice whether you can respect another human or not, when you believe or don't believe what they say. I can treat somebody with utmost respect, or I can be like, no, I'm not going to do this. But, I don't have to get what they're going through to respect them. That's my whole thing. Like, even if I don't understand, which I don't fully understand that because I'm not in that body myself, I'm not confused about anything. I do identify as female. I do identify, though, as not someone who follows gender roles or social norms, but that's been a lifelong thing. But I think that comes with being neurodivergent. So I think that's a common thing as well. But, I also know that if I see someone living a different way, especially here in America, we have so many different people side by side here, mentally, physically, emotionally. If I see someone who has totally different views and says, I identify as a Christian, or I even identify as a Satanist, or whatever they identify as, like, that's part of your identity too, religion. So I think that's why people do get very offended. Because if you're like, respect my identity, I identify as this, and they're like, haha, Christians are stupid. You're like, hey, yo, that's not okay. And I see a lot of people sometimes will say things like, oh, well, I identify as a toaster then. So they do get mocked. They do get made fun of. People are very immature when it comes down to it because they don't understand. So, like, with not understanding, some people will literally mock people. Like, back in the day, when segregation ended and people wanted to go to school, what happened to those little children walking to school? They had tomatoes thrown at them. They were mocked. You'll never do anything with this education. Whenever anything big happens that changes in society, especially when we've been the ones to put the labels on them, because you said you see someone and you can see that they're male, right? Or you see that they're female. That means you put that label on them, right? Or they appear that way to your mind of what you think a man is or a woman is. So when we label other people, we're kind of taking away their ability to label themselves. And I'm not saying a baby gets born and you ask the baby, because it's a baby. It's not going to come out the womb and be like, well, I identify as this. That's silly. I agree. I agree. Like, that doesn't make sense. But once they're older, if they feel differently, like if my son loves wearing dresses, by the way, he's autistic. He's also 4. So, like, he legit is just whatever. And some people go, you shouldn't let him do that. And I'm like, why? They're like,
I
you shouldn't let him play with babies. I'm like, why? He might be a father one day. Like, what's the problem? He's 4. He's playing.
can
So that's
I
just how I
I'm gonna,
feel.
I'm gonna bring White Coat in because he's been waiting just a little bit. He wants
Oh,
to have a
sorry.
conversation with us. He wants to talk to us about what we've been talking about. He said something he wanted to respond a little bit before I asked my previous question, but then I got too involved in what's going on. So I'm gonna bring him in and see what he has to say around everything that's going on. We'll continue the conversation. I'm
remind
sure
me?
that
I have
he
an
is.
embarrassing story about dresses, just so that I remember it, because I'll forget it in
Yeah.
2 minutes
do
if you
you
don't
do you
remind
have
me.
pictures though? Do you have pictures? Is the more important
My
question.
mom does.
Oh my gosh, I
I'm
want to see.
sure they all do.
You've got to put them up, or maybe not because you might not want to. But I'm like, darn, I wish I could see that.
White
Yeah.
Coat,
Hey.
thanks for joining us on the open debate. How you doing tonight?
Hey, good evening. All right. Well, what I wanted to address was your question. You asked, what is it to me if a trans person uh, doesn't cause harm to me or something like that? What is it to me? Like, and the answer to that is, I have to answer in the form of mental health, right? Now, mental health has so many derivatives. I understand that trans people suffer from mental health, complications and so forth. I also believe that uh, because if somebody has to shove stuff in my face all the time, I also feel that that's also a mental state of health. It affects me mentally. It also affects my kids. When my kids go out in public and they see two dads, they're going to struggle with this kind of construct. Now, it's not something that I can shield them from because they're not at home. They're not in my presence for me to actually address that issue. But so if my kids were out, if they see like two men kissing or something, and kids are not stupid. Kids they know. They see something, they know. They're gonna be like, they're probably gonna look at me like, ew, excuse my demeanor, but they'll be like, ew, daddy, why are these two guys kissing? You know what I mean? It's like it's not that I told them anything. It's like they just automatically know, right? So they don't understand. So to answer that, I feel like there's a mental health construct there because so the fact that I have to accept something, although it's not like directly, it's not like a danger. You know what I mean? Like they didn't affect me, directly anyway. It indirectly affects me, whereby if let's say it affects my kids, you get what I'm saying?
By what?
Does
Them
that make sense?
existing or?
No, just for my kids. If,
Well,
if my kids,
because that was a very I can feel the hostility in your voice. So let
Oh,
me just
I'm
try to
not
break down what
hostile.
you're saying.
It was
No,
like
no,
a
no, 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 no,
question.
not hostile. And everybody as well. Remember,
I'm pretty
just kind of
chill.
watch your microphones because they can hit really if they're hitting on your hair. I
Oh,
keep feeling this
jacket.
in my hair too. Yeah.
Oh crap.
Yeah. But I think what he's trying to say is more so, you know, because everybody wants to raise their kids different ways, and so it's like when you're a young kid, um, being introduced into sexual experiences that need to be explained. It's more so obviously, I don't know, it's kind of a strange thing. So people don't like to admit that this is a real thing, but biologically, I would say, and I could be wrong with the statistics right here, but 99% of the human population is biologically wired to be attracted to the opposite sex. And so if you're a child, you may have weird thoughts and desires that you don't fully understand, but it's more than likely towards the opposite sex. But you're not really questioning these things, let's say on an average, because you see your mother and your father, you see other couples on TV, you see other couples that are men and women, and you see that like men and women get together in some way, and they do have some weird relationship. You don't know what it is, but you know that you have this weird attraction. Now that's not for everybody, but it's for the majority of the population. This is how biology works. This is why we procreate. This is why we've survived as a species. And so when you have children and you're worried about raising your children, there are certain situations with the influx of, because what White Coat was really addressing was more so gay relationships rather than trans relationships, and the influx of the LGBTQ community into the mainstream hemisphere. Thanks for joining us, Swiftness. So yeah, with that being said, It's more so the idea, at least from what I'm hearing, my opinion, is that it introduces a new concept of when you look at the idea of sexuality and not just biologically wired. So if a kid is doing something that is like, yes, this is what humans do, obviously it's still what humans do. It's not, I don't know, it's a strange concept. So all we're trying to figure out, all I'm trying to say is like, at what age do you start introducing the idea of sexuality into a child's life and then having to explain to your kids the inner workings around how humans really do intertwine and develop, and how there is a nuance between, like, it's not that you should tell your kid don't be gay. You should not tell your kid to be anything. You should let your kid just grow up the way that they are. So it shouldn't be influenced of like, yes, you should be gay. It's like, and
Yeah.
even the idea, it's like, as a 7-year-old kid seeing two men kiss and then questioning what's going on, even like, because the thing is, this is just the difference. Because when you see the men and the women kiss, and you've seen it because it's a societal construct, like we've talked about, and like we said, 99%, my own statistic, of
It's
human
97.
beings, this is how 97. Okay,
That's Cam.
this is how, yeah, this is how we procreate. This is how life continues. And so no one's questioning that narrative. It doesn't have anything to do with sexuality. You don't know anything about it. You just know, like, this is what life is. This is how people go. But then you see an opposite thing, and you're like, wait, what is that? Wait, why
Yeah.
are they doing that? Wait, you can just kind of like do that? Like, wait, this is like what people do for fun? Like, and then like it's like this weird thing where it's like, why, and like at what age, and why is it being
Well-
introduced so early, and like just the whole thing. And so that's a separate issue. But how do you feel about that?
Okay, well, I can start it all, but that's a lot to try to. I just need a couple minutes. So, in the beginning,
Yeah.
you said that based on society, most of us are straight, and you said that that's natural functioning. First off, we can never know that. And the reason we can never know that is because we live in a heteronormative society, meaning we don't live in a society that is filled with mostly gay people. So,
But
we
let me
won't
just-
know if it's
I want you to
normal to be
continue.
straight.
I want
Because
you to
it's
continue,
nature
but I just
versus
wanna say
nurture.
this. Yeah, but I just want to say you this. Like, I understand that we live in a heteronormative society, but you understand that this is how we have advanced as a civilization, as human beings. We wouldn't get to
Yes.
this point if we didn't, on average, if we weren't attracted to the opposite sex. I have no problem with anybody, by the way. It's just I'm trying to break things down and look at it in a logical sense, where it's like, as creatures, as biological beings, if this was not the average, and not even if we were just left to our own devices, if this was not what we would be doing, we would not have advanced to the society that we are at today.
Well,
my
I don't know.
opinion.
I
It
don't know
doesn't make
about that
sense.
because you see it in animals as well. There's a lot of gay and bisexuality in animals as well. So I wouldn't say that either. You see it
Okay.
in all different types of animals and primates. But
We're gonna let Nero go
regardless,
for a bit. Let her just
so
speak for a bit,
so
and then
let me try to see if I can get through all this. So, and don't worry, because there would always be bi people too, so there'll still be kids. Don't worry. I'm just sorry. I know. I'm just trying to make people laugh now a little, break the ice. I'm not like I talk very like bluntly, so hopefully, and I get passionate, so I get loud, but I'm not angry. But hopefully, nobody takes like my bluntness where I'm like asking questions for clarification. I'm not upset, just so you guys know. But I know sometimes if I'm blunt and I say something like quickly, then people are like, "Oh, is she mad?" And I've gotten that my whole life, so I don't take it personally. It's part of my neurodivergency. But anyways, back to the point. So with a lot of these points, my whole perspective or view is that all animals have a higher rate of like at least you could be any sexuality. As far as kids not seeing it, most gay kids are born from straight parents. So the idea of children being influenced by gay people, it seems to be the opposite. And with gay people, they don't have an agenda. They don't have like a religion where they're like, we're going to stone straight people to death if they're straight, right? So for me, I think that we live in a very heteronormative society. I think that it was similar to what happened during the civil rights movement. When you started seeing the interracial relationships, people went, ew, I don't want to see. Why are they together? Oh, they're holding hands or going to a movie. How dare they? They can't get married. They're different races. And now it went on to they're different, they're different, like their sexuality is different. So anytime we have something that veers from what is considered socially acceptable, it is usually attacked with brute force. You see this with religion. You see this with sexuality. Use anything that makes you different, sets you apart from the rest of humanity. Humans are vicious. They will come down and attack you for it. They are afraid. They don't want you influencing their kids. They don't want you. But like if you look at it through society, through history, it's been predominantly straight people that you see on TV. And yet those whole generation of gay people that are now adults, TV didn't make them gay. You know, just like when people are like, oh, well, autism seems to be on the rise. Things are making our kids autistic. I'm like, oh, do you want your kid to hang out with my kid? He might catch autism. Like, you know, that would be like saying that, which doesn't make sense. Obviously, it wouldn't happen. That's a horrible joke, but I think you guys know what I mean. So like, you know, it's not something that, you know, and me, I'm pansexual, which means I just found out recently, which just means I fall in love with the soul, not so much the gender. So I've been with women, but I am now currently engaged to a man, which means I'm faithful to that man and only monogamous with that man. And I've been with him for about 8 years. But on the same note, I have been with women in the past. So like say we awfully went our different ways, which I hope never happens. But if we did, you'd have to probably take a guess at where I'd end up in the future, because I don't really care so much about, you know, I fall in love with someone's soul. It sounds really corny and strange, but that's the only way I can kind of describe it. And that's what attracts me first, is somebody's personality, genuinely, like who someone is what draws me in. So that's just how I am. Now, not many people are like me. I know that, but I also know I'm literally wired differently, which I've been told since I was a kid when I was diagnosed as being perceptually impaired or perceptually different. So that means my brain literally perceives things differently. So I like, as I got older, started to realize what that meant. And I was like, oh, that's hilarious, actually. And my whole family is that way. We're all neurodivergent and we're all a little bit different from the rest of society, and that's okay. You know, but I don't try to like force people to view things a certain way, but I also firmly believe in freedom. So I feel like if I treat someone who's Christian with utmost respect because they're Christian, even if I don't identify as Christian anymore, even if I don't agree with that way of life, then I feel like it's not too hard for me to respect someone else. You know, even if I don't get it, it doesn't hurt me to respect. And if I truly believe in freedom, right? If I'm from a country and I promote freedom and I don't want people to take away my freedoms or tell me how to live my life, I feel like if I do that to them, I'm kind of a hypocrite. I feel like if I'm like, hey, you need to live this way to make me more comfortable, it makes me feel like I'm trying to control their life and who they are as a person and where they can go to express themselves. I don't, in like, as far as sexuality on children, I can't remember how many times people tell me, my son, who's literally 4, they'll go, oh, does he have a girlfriend yet?
Right.
Sexual, like that's pushed on kids all the time, and it's wrong and it's inappropriate. And I'll actually call people out and be like, no, please don't make those jokes like about any sexuality in front of children. But as far as people having 2 mommies or 2 daddies, it doesn't hurt to say, you know, if you feel comfortable as a parent, that is obviously it's a choice. But for me, I just say love is love. You know what I mean? So like I just say, you know, sometimes 2 women love each other, sometimes 2 men love each other. Families come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, genders. And that's all I explain. I don't tell people like anything intimate about how that gets that way, because they're young, that's inappropriate, and I would never do that. That's just not okay. But I don't feel like people are forcing their life on me. I don't feel like I'm forcing my life on them. But sometimes when the world changes so drastically in front of you, it's terrifying, I think, to a lot of people. Sudden changes in society scare humans, and historically, it's usually met by violence, due to fear. Like people are terrified because they're like, no, don't you dare influence my children. They might become like you. It's like a fear thing, I think. And while that fear is valid, you can have fears about anything. Hopefully people are just respectful. They're not violent. They go, hey, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but on the same note, like you can exist and I can exist, and we can just go our separate ways and kind of just, you know, exist.
Yeah.
That's my
I
whole
like
thing.
I like to address some things that she said. Um, you know, she mentioned whereby she compared the LGBT community with racial disparities that have happened in the past. I believe they're very different, right? But before I get there, she said something about comparative anatomy or you know, interspecies, right? We have to understand something, okay? As human beings, we are human beings for a reason. We cannot compare ourselves to other animals. We cannot compare ourselves to dogs. We cannot compare ourselves to horseshoes. There's a reason why we are biologically different. Whereby we have a higher purpose and a higher cognitive ability. So for me to say a dog, look at a dog. A male dog is humping a male dog. So therefore, it's okay for a male human to hump a male human. It's totally different, right? So here's my point. This is where it comes critical. I feel like when it comes to you know, LGBT, there's something we need to separate. It's fact versus fiction, right? When it comes to fiction, it's more from an emotional standpoint, whereby there's fantasy involved, right? when it comes to fact, it's biology. And then as far as biology, um, now for things to be become abnormal or they become normal. So this is why we have things on the factual side. We have things such as Klinefelter's syndrome. We have things like Turner syndrome. We have all these genetic modification or quote unquote abnormalities. These are what deviates the fact, right, of science from the emotional standpoint of fiction, whereby there's emotion, there's fluid identity, and all these kind of constructs that are involved on that side. So we have two sides: it's fact and then fiction. Now, to compare LGBT community to racial disparities in the past, it's definitely not the same. Because if you look at every human being, right? If you were to, we different from skin color, we get that. But if we are to look at the blood, for example, we all bleed the same color, right? Now we do not all share the same sexual preference because we just don't. So for you to compare the LGBT community to the way, for example, how African Americans have been treated in the past, it's a completely different comparison. It's a different analogy. So that's
How so though? They're not both
because
discriminated against or shunned or attacked or murdered at higher rates?
Yeah.
yeah, they are. Yeah, they are definitely. But what I'm saying is to say to say that there's something called a one like I said, one makes more sense to me, right? So
Okay.
for you to say humans are not equal, that I disagree with. But to say that people should be trans or something, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I understand that from now. If you're a trans and you say you feel like a woman because you have more chromosome than the other, it's one thing. But for you to have this fantasy of becoming a woman because you feel emotionally attached, or you feel there should be this fluid identity, is something that's different. That's what I mean by it's not the same. So yes,
let's
race.
let's get a definition down, because because when you started talking earlier, when we were talking about trans people, you went into like the gay community and stuff, and so
Yeah.
what are you specifically talking about, and where do your grievances lay? Is it in
All right,
the
I guess
LGBT community as a whole, or is it in in general, what? Because
I guess
we're
I
not
guess
really,
I
because
have
we're
to.
talking about different groups of people really here.
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
have to pretty much start from the top. So I believe there are only two. When it comes to gender, there are two dimensions. There's a male and female, right? And then there is a third dimension. That's where the LGBT comes into play, because that dimension, I feel like it's a fantasy and it's an identity. It's a social gender, not quite a construct, but it's like a social gender, as in identify. So I identify this is where the LGBT comes, right? I identify that I am a male, and I am attracted to a male, right? I identify that I'm a female and that I'm attracted to a female. Now, biologically, that does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. But you are free to do what makes you happy. So definitely, I I support you, even though I'll never understand them. So does this make sense? And then my pronouns, from that understanding, that my pronouns are a he and she, not they or them, because pronouns to me, they're specifically from a dictionary, right? So
Yeah.
there's nothing in the dictionary that tells me that a they is a person. A they is it's a group of people, right?
I'm so
Not
Okay,
so
necessarily.
confused.
yeah, I'm gonna let Dusty respond, and then we'll get to you, Neuro.
Okay, I'm just a little confused. You just said your pronouns are he and she.
Hmm.
Where are you?
Like a male and a
I'm
female, male and
you're
female.
no, but that you just yeah. So
He
you're
was just saying that he's just only going
There's
by
no, I don't
pronouns
believe in
that
I don't believe in people calling themselves they and stuff like that. I just believe
yeah. Okay,
in,
no, no. They is used as plural or as an unknown, and so when we see somebody that we say that we're looking at the back of somebody, and we can't identify whether or not they're male or female, we'll say, well, it was them over there. But if they were to turn around and it was a woman, you'd say it was her over there, because we only use those when we don't know what a person is. I understand that. Thank you. But when it comes down to people, I wanted to hit this one because you were Neuro was talking about how people aren't forcing gender identity onto children, like to be trans and this and that. And there's TV shows of people doing this to kids that are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, saying that they put on the dress and so they must be a girl. Now we're going to raise them as a girl. You see this a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that it happens a lot, but it does happen. And the story I was going to say that's slightly embarrassing is when I was a child, me, my sister, and my brother did Wizard of Oz play for our mom. We were just being kids when we wanted to play the Wizard of Oz. And I got to be Dorothy. So I got to wear the dress. And that's the picture she has is my sister is Toto, me in the dress, and my little brother is the Scarecrow. And because I put on a dress didn't make me transgender. It was just a kid playing dress up like kids do. And she never pushed me to be one thing or another. She just let me be a kid. And too many people are not letting their kids these days be kids. As soon as the kids play with a doll or something else, they either go, "Oh, you can't play with the doll," or "Oh, they must be, on the spectrum," as they call it. And they start molding the child into what they perceive their kid to be, rather than just letting the kid grow up and be who they are. And I've heard I've heard and I agree with this statement that that is a form of child abuse to do that to a child. I have to agree that is a form of child abuse, because you are projecting your wants and wishes onto a child that has no understanding other than, I want to make mommy or daddy happy. I want to please mommy and daddy. That's what kids do. And if you tell a young boy, a 4 or 5 year old boy, he's a girl, he's going to be, oh, mom says I'm a girl, so I'm a girl, and he's going to start playing that role until he starts believing that role, whether he is or isn't. And I think that is a very harmful thing that people do to children. And it shouldn't happen. Just because somebody plays with dolls and Barbies or guns and Tonka toys doesn't mean that they are one thing or the other. It just means they're a child playing.
I agree, but can I ask you how many people do you know, or do you know name of a family that did that, like a single family that did that, where the mom like told the child, since you're playing with a doll, now you're a girl? Or
There is a family in Vancouver that was actually had a show where at the time it was their 11-year-old, and he was 7 when they started transitioning him.
wow, that's highly rare, because here in the States, like for example, my son, I let him dress in dresses if he wants to play with dolls, but I still consider him my son. I don't consider him having a sexuality or gender or different. I consider him male. I consider him my son, but I just consider him somebody who's playing. I used to climb trees and break bones all the time playing football. And then I used to put makeup on my little brother and put him in dresses. And
Right.
none of us had anything like that. And none of our parents told us anything like that. I do, however, have people that are trans in my life, and they say, I'm just gonna love my kid the way they are. Like with my son, if he tells me he wants to play with something, I don't go, oh, that means you're this, because then I'm deciding for him. And a lot of parents do decide things, but not necessarily that. But like they'll be like, no, you need to do this. You need to make me happy. You need to get a good job, work here, act like this. When you go out in society, don't be loud. And kids will do anything to please their parents. But I've just never, I do believe that there might be some rare families out there. I just don't think it's that common. I do know that if my son were to come to me at 14 and say, I feel like I'm a girl, and he kept saying it over and over again, I wouldn't try to force him to fit into his pants and his shirt and have him cry hysterically and feel like that would be child abuse too. Like if he like identified as female to me, like at 14, and I was like, too bad, you're dressing like this. that could cause him issues as well, even if biologically he was born male. And as an adult, I would have to decide if I was going to kick him out of my house and be like, no, I have a son, and just reject him out of my life, right? Or
Yeah, but
say, you know what, I'll accept you on your terms. I love you. And I would
yeah,
bring
but
him to a doctor and have them talk to him. I'd bring him to a psychologist and a medical doctor and have them all talk to him. And it would take, like in the States, for example, you can't just give your kids treatments at young ages. They don't allow it. So like here, we're not allowed to
in
give like hormonal treatments or surgeries
puberty
before they're a
blockers,
certain age. Yeah, we're not allowed to do that until like later on. So like
there's
I think they can start some of the blockers young, but they can't do any surgeries. And as soon as you stop taking the blockers, the hormones go back to normal. It's not permanent.
only it is permanent though
In
if you
in a
get
certain
past
time frame.
if you get past a certain point, it is permanent.
Yeah.
And
Like if it's years, then you're in trouble. But at that point,
but
usually the
but
person would know.
but puberty blockers have to be started before or very early into puberty, which
I want to
is
say this though.
typically 10 and 11 years old. And
Yeah.
to say that a kid that young knows what they want to be when they grow up, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I sure as heck didn't end up going down that path.
Yeah, I
Well,
did too.
it's not
I wish
it's
I
not so
had
much choosing
I
what to
just,
be though. I
yeah,
think it's
no,
more like a
I want to say
feeling.
this. But I want to say this. Just for everybody in the chat and anybody who just disagrees, there is a very not a large, but large in comparison to back in the day when trans people first started coming out. There is a community of individuals who have transitioned and have regressed from their transitions and have gone back
Mhm.
to their original state. And their stories are also worth listening to because that community itself is very shunned, it's very silenced, and people don't give them weight because they assume from a lot of the base perspectives that I've seen from people, they say that those people are invalidating trans people who that don't regret their decision and that are happy with the weight. But the thing is, in my opinion, when I always speak about this stuff, Nero, watch your mic.
Sorry.
um, well, I always speak about this because, like, I don't have a leg in the game. You know, I don't have a rat in the race here. But my rat in the race is society in general. And so, coming from a different perspective than White Goat, like he said, it does affect everybody in general. But I care about people, and I care about, as a society, if we have a group of individuals who, I'm going to throw out these statistics, they are wrong. I know that they're wrong, but let's say that there's a 80% bad rate for individuals who believe that they are trans. And then after transition, the rate goes down to, like, let's say 72%. That's not satisfying me. This isn't the answer. I'd like to understand how we can get into fixing the issues that these individuals are facing within society, what the real issues are, and what the solutions to combat that problem is. Because as it is right now, we've all agreed that there are psychological issues that these individuals face, such as body dysmorphia, which is a real thing that if you're a bodybuilder, people are going to look at. If you have anorexia, people are going to literally admit you into the hospital to make sure that you're okay, because that's how serious of an issue it becomes. But for other individuals within society, we choose to play into whatever belief they have, and if you choose to even come close to believing that what they're saying is not 100% correct, then you are a problem and you are not advancing society. When in reality, trying to figure out how to fix a problem requires you to understand the problem itself and admitting that there is a problem. And so, I don't know. I just want to actually see the best for people and not. In the beginning, I had up here, what good is virtue signaling? And it goes for a lot of things where it's like, yeah, cool. It'd be great just to like if I had an eating disorder and I wanted burgers all day and I was 600 pounds, you bringing me food to my bed is going to make me feel great, and you're going to be making me feel happy and good, and it's going to be advancing my health in that day. But in the long run, you're going to be hurting me. And so what is the actual solution here?
I feel
Well,
like
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I feel like one of the things that we got to do, like I said, people are, for I'm for people being happy and everything, and I feel like it comes to a certain age that people should actually, effectively they can actually, I think in my opinion, that they should start. Like, I feel like it should be age dependent. Now, I feel like one of the things that we can definitely do is educate these young boys and girls, right? We need to understand what they're doing to their body as far, especially when it comes to those hormones, because at some point, putting all that testosterone in your body, it can, and it has been. There are statistics out there that medically it has caused heart attacks. All right. And then the other one, when you put testosterone in your body, what tends to happen is that you decrease estrogen. And the purpose of estrogen, what estrogen does to the human skeletal system, it actually protects it. So it takes calcium and it packs the bone. So for you to suppress estrogen, right, because you're going from a female to male, for example, right? You're doing a lot to your body, and I feel like a lot of these young boys and girls that are going through the transition, they have no clue of what's really happening to their body. And I feel like one way that we can start, it should start from the medical professionals. Number one, I feel like they need to educate these kids. They need to fully understand, give these kids pamphlets, thoroughly, like have them investigate. I mean, have them, learn what exactly is happening to their body. Because until then, they will never really understand, what they're really doing to their body. Especially when somebody wants to start at like a tender age, like 12 or 14 years old. There's a lot that you're going through that you're putting your body through, and I feel like education is one big key concept.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, do you guys not do that in Canada, not give information when kids are transitioning? Or because the States, it's a really long process with a lot of information giving and counseling, but I don't know how it is.
It also depends. Yeah, I'm from New York. I grew up in Long Island. I grew up in Long Island, and I knew a kid. He started his transition. He's 27 now. He's already had 2 heart attacks. It was a female going to male, and he was one of those kids. I knew him. I grew up with him and everything. Because I was one of his trainers, right? When I was back in school, the personal trainer was one of my jobs. So his parents, he didn't listen to his parents. He didn't care what his parents said. His parents came to me, but like, hey, this is what my son wants to do. This is what my daughter wants to do. He wants to go to become a son. His name is Alex. He came from Alexandra to just Alex. And I realized that he particularly didn't want to be bothered. He didn't want to listen. He didn't want to listen from anybody. He didn't want anybody to talk to him about the whole transition. He just wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of, he's still alive, but he's already had 2 heart attacks, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's ironic. We're talking about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, they checked his heart. The last time his troponin T levels were like skyrocketed through the roof. So he's already had 2 heart attacks. So
wow. But you mentioned May Turner's before as a genetic condition. And I thought that was interesting because I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is also a genetic condition, but we're hypermobile. So when we have estrogen too much, it actually hurts us. So some people with Ehlers-Danlos, I've actually been told you should take small amounts of testosterone if you can manage it to reduce your symptoms of pain, because then you'll get more you'll be able to build more muscle, which will help tighten around your loose ligaments and tendons, thus less hypermobility, less chance of popping out a joint, like by running into a wall and accidentally dislocating my shoulder. So basically, a lot of people with EDS who are female take small amounts of testosterone, not to transition at all, but to get more stability of their joints. So just an interesting fact, it can actually be used as treatment for medical conditions for people too, in small amounts with a doctor, of course. I never opted to do that. I'm still extremely hypermobile, but I'm hoping it doesn't get worse. I'm 35, so who knows? And I have other issues too that are genetic, but that's besides the point. But I do agree that things can be done the wrong way. Things can harm and cause permanent damage, I'm sure. As can anything, as can a plastic surgery. Somebody wants to get their nose fixed. Somebody wants another elective surgery. You know what I mean? Or your gallbladder fails. You need that out. You see that all the time, at least here in America. Like, people have horrible stuff go on during medical procedures constantly here, which I'm not very proud of. But, it's a complication. But hopefully the person is, well informed and old enough to make that decision, and they're safe enough. But I don't don't think they should be ostracized from society, because if you want to try to figure out a problem or help people, if you ostracize them or if you try to attack them or say, you know, I don't want you being here or existing here, or like I don't want you being around other people and being around my kids and existing, you're never going to get to the root of the problem. You're just ostracizing them. And like if you have a child that views themselves as a different gender, if you tell them I absolutely forbid you from doing that, then I say good luck, because like anytime my parents told me not to do something, guess what? I was like, oh really? Hold my drink. I'm gonna go do it now. So not saying that they would make a choice like that over that, but my point is you don't want to ostracize or push someone out. If you're trying to help them, that is the worst way to go. Like the tough love doesn't really quite work in that regard. I can understand why people might feel that way, because our parents did that, right? Whether like, you know, my dad was like, you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. But it never really resolved anything, except for his
So,
anger, maybe.
okay, so my question is, with
Okay,
the whole,
I do
oh,
have to
sorry.
end the stream. I do have to end the stream soon.
Okay.
And I do want to pose a question to each of you, because the underlying thing, and which is will be a larger conversation for the future, is what seems to be the driving difference between most of the opinions that we've formed around is at what age should sexuality be introduced to children? Because no one's like, well, White Coat, you may have quite a little bit of a different opinion, but on general, the conversation here hasn't really been about whether or not people should love individuals or have relationships with people who are of a different gender. It's around at what point should that be introduced as something that's like a point of topic. And so when you have, you know, you can be a man and you can love men, you can be a woman, you can love women, but the idea of being a man, like, and being a man and then not feeling like a man and transitioning into a woman, there is an entire conversation that comes around why and what is the purpose of being a man, or what is the purpose of being a woman? What are those roles in society, and what does that mean for the greater means of your role as a human being? And so the question is, like, that's why I think a lot of people have such an issue, because at a young age, there's a child is making this decision around what is my role in society going to be, I guess you could say. So it's all about how you picture society as in itself as well. Just an interesting conversation with people that are actually open to talk about it. So we're going to start with Dusty, go to Neuro, and go back to you, White Coat, and we will let you guys all have the floor and tell us how you feel. Start down here. Dusty, what's up with you?
At what point should people be introduced to it?
Yeah.
Introduced to it, I mean, if a child asks, explain it to them. Obviously, they're going to see it. It's everywhere. I mean, you can't hide from these topics. But explain it to them like White Coat had said. You know, sometimes guys love guys. Sometimes girls love girls, and sometimes girls love guys, and vice versa. But explaining explaining it to them in that simple base form is not confusing. It's when people try to over explain the nuances of it all. Kids don't need to know about sexuality at young ages. It's just not something that they'll ever comprehend. And so, if you're going to start talking about sexuality with children, I think that you got to wait until they start questioning sexuality. I'm not really a good person to ask about talking to children. I don't have any. So I'm not sure how I would react if someone was telling a 5-year old about, you know, the nuances of sex. Probably I'd be a little side eyed looking at them like, what are you doing? But I just, like I said, I don't have kids. I can't really speak as to when a good age is because I haven't raised any kids to any age. I try to avoid a lot of kids because I just I don't particularly like being around them. Um, if everyone else has kids, you know, I'm not saying people shouldn't have kids. I'm just saying I shouldn't. I don't. I'm not parent material. But but I also think, and this is very true. I think everyone can agree that that is a conversation for the parents to have with the child, and is not a conversation that, the grandparents, the teachers, Bob two doors over, no one else should be having that conversation with the kids. They're your kids. You know what's, or should know what's best for them, and you should be able to make that decision. And if you're teaching a 4-year-old about sex, well, you should be in jail, I think, at that point, because that's just, 4-year-olds don't care about sex. They care about going out and playing and, you know, going and having fun and bouncy castles. But to saying that, you know, men love men, girls love girls, and men and girls love each other, that's something they understand, because what they understand is as love is they love their parents, they love their siblings. That's a concept they can understand, and it's not a sexual concept to love somebody. It's just an attachment that we have and is understandable at any age.
Oh, I think those are some good words. Thank you for that. Nero, how do you feel?
Well, I feel like, I agree with the one part where you said if you're teaching a 4-year-old about it, that's like highly inappropriate. I would never. That's creepy and strange. I haven't even figured out how to talk to my 9-year-old daughter, and I just had to go over the period talk with her because I'm like, I need to talk to her before it happens. Um, but she went immediately to go to, well, if the periods are just eggs, is that what makes the baby? And I was like, oh gosh, darn it, you're a girl, so you can figure this out. No. And I'm like, well, we'll have that talk soon, honey. And she's like, well, I want it now. I'm like, not quite yet, but yes, that's the baby. And she goes, well, what makes it go there? I'm like, that part you're going to wait a little bit for. Mommy needs a little bit more
Yeah.
time on that one because she's
Yeah.
9. I think like she probably would handle it better than me. I'm like, I'm not doing this right now. I'm not ready. Like I need to figure out how to talk about it in an appropriate way. And like it's making me a little bit nervous. But as far as, I've always told my kids, like my daughter asked me when she was 2, if it was always a boy and a girl together. And I was like, well, you can, like, sometimes 2 girls love each other, like two women love each other, 2 men love each other, sometimes man and woman love each other. And she would just went, oh, okay. And that was it. Like she didn't like question it any further. It was just, oh, all right, like very matter of fact. So I don't think most kids, like you were saying, they don't really, and she normally asks me 10 million questions, but that she got right away. And that was it, and then in school they do teach sex ed in pretty much every school that I think of in the US. Because here, like for example, we had a time period in US history, and we still do in some southern states, like they have it to where they have it banned from their schools, and their teenage pregnancy rates are through the roof because the parents don't have to talk with them. And then guess what happens? The kids figure it out on their own. So like I do agree that there should be some type of education, but it shouldn't be super young. And it should be like in like, as toddlers. But I know like recently in the US, there was like this whole controversy because I think people misunderstood where they were saying they were going to teach kids the actual parts of their body, which I agree. Like my son shouldn't be calling his, private parts by a pet name or anything else. He should know what it's called because God forbid, I mean, hopefully nothing will ever happen to any children, but they should know what the parts names are. That way, God forbid anything inappropriate happens by an adult, that adult can go to jail right away because they can tell another adult, hey, this happened to my blah, blah, blah. Because if you have that kid take the stand, which I hope to God, again, would never happen. But if they say, oh, someone touched my cookie, they're going to go, your what? My cookie. Oh, well, we can't prosecute that person now because they said cookie. You know what I mean? So I do agree that it's important to label and identify their private parts on their body to them from a young age. Like when they're using the bathroom, you say that's your blah, blah, blah for male and blah, blah, blah for female, like just penis and vagina. Like I don't want to get banned, but you know what I mean? Just the actual names of the parts. And that's not sexual. That's the name of your body. It's not bad. And you also tell them at that point, no one has a right to touch your body. And like, in that sometimes, and not there at least. And sometimes like a doctor, if they have to touch your belly or something, that might happen, but they'll say before they do it, like if you ever get like, sick or something, that's like the only time. But I teach my children like bodily consent and stuff like that from a young age. Cause all I have to say is that is your body. Nobody else has the right to touch it. If somebody does, tell mommy immediately. The only time that people might touch it might be doctors and due to medical reasons, but mommy will be with you or daddy will be with you at that time. So, that way I can hopefully keep a watchful eye because yeah, I do worry about that kind of stuff in this world. But on the same note, like when they talked about mentioning to children in America, teaching them the rightful names of their body parts, people went crazy and they're like, they're teaching porn in kindergarten. I'm like, that is not what they're doing. They're teaching them the names of their own body parts, which they kind of should do, in my opinion. I think, God forbid, like a child needs to be able to identify it. Or like, let's say there was something medically that happened or they were having pain, you got to be able to know what to call it. So I do agree fully with that part, but the sex ed obviously should wait till they're older. I'm still figuring out how to tell my 9-year-olds, and it's an awkward conversation for sure. I think a lot of parents aren't doing these things. I think like these crazy stories of like people like changing their kids or trying to like ruin their kids for society, or I don't think that's really happening unless the parent's significantly mentally ill. Like you see parents that try to make their kids sick, for example. Like you heard that Gypsy, whatever her name is, the little girl who her mom lied and said she had cancer and like pulled all her teeth out, like horrible, horrible abuse. And she finally snapped and killed her mother. And I kind of like, not that I'm for murder, but I kind of get why she lost it because I would have lost it too if my mom was keeping me in a wheelchair and lying and, getting a bunch of money and stuff like that's like, I can't imagine the psychological damage that girl went through. So yes, parents can do awful things because humans can do awful things, period. But I think that is luckily the rarity. I don't think that parents abuse their children that horribly. Unfortunately, it does still occur, but I think it's more the rarity type thing. But as far as, gender and stuff like that, to me, my whole philosophy in life is if I truly am an advocate for freedom, if I don't want people to take my rights away, and I claim to be someone who doesn't want anyone to mess with anyone's rights, then even if whether I understand what someone's doing or how they're choosing to live their life or not, if I'm really an advocate for freedom, I'm not going to try to take their rights away. Because if I am, then I'm a hypocrite. Like, you know what I mean? That's how I feel. And I mean, everybody else is entitled to feel how they want to. But I just feel like it's just kind of hypocritical because then it's freedom for me, not for thee. And it's just, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And even when it comes to religion and stuff, because, not everybody follows the same religion. So that's, again, enforcing my will upon other people. So for me, it's just live and let live. And kind of, as long as nobody is abusing children, like literally abusing them, then let them live their life, and try to be kind and accepting. And if you want to learn more, try being like accepting and ask people. And literally most of them, if you're not like making fun of them in the comments, being like, I identify as a toaster, they'll feel comfortable to talk to you. But if like you're making fun of them or, being like, you're wrong, you shouldn't live that way, God says it's wrong. Of course, they're going to be like not talking to you because they're going to be like, whoa, that's a bit much. Like, but if you're like, hey, I'm just curious. I know this is difficult to talk about, but I really, really like to know more about it. I think people are going to be way more open to talking to you. At least that would be my experience. So yeah, that's pretty much my only thought. So I'm sorry, that was a ramble.
That was good. Well, that was
Sorry.
good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Can I just talk to Neural for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
I'll let you respond and then we'll go to Wakefield.
It's not a response. It's just I wanted to look up transgender children in Canada to get more support. Expert says CBC News. Type
I will
that
check it
into
out.
Google. Type that into Google. This is what our country thinks is the appropriate age to transgender.
Yeah, Canada is a lot different than the United States, so it is a good cross-reference to see the differences. Because
Well, I
Canada
could
is
see
a
how
lot-
that would be a problem because if it's much younger, I could understand because especially, and you're right, there are times where the people, they do go back and want to be the other gender. And I agree that happens too, which is why it's not really an exact science. And we're still learning about, people who do that, but hopefully we do so with open arms and not like attacking. But yes, children too young, I agree with you there. They should not be doing anything permanent that would change their body permanently and cause potential injury. I don't think that's okay, or psychological damage either.
The-
But I'll check it out.
Yeah,
That's
because
amazing.
the article says 7 and 8-year-olds.
Wow, that's too young. That's too young. I agree with that. That's too young. I kind of
Yeah.
agree there. At least to be changing anything physically or with medication. Like as far as like treating them differently if it made them feel better, I don't think anything could hurt that way. Although I won't tell another parent what to do.
It's
But
puberty
as far
blockers
as
can
changing it,
start.
yeah, that's different. That's
What?
different.
That is
Yeah,
crazy.
CBC
That's
News.
weird.
An interesting country to say the least when it comes to
Wow.
progressive rules. But thank
That's
you,
interesting.
League Nero, for those thoughts and those final words there, because they were very much appreciated, and you sounded very well as always. I'm gonna ask Whitecoat his final opinion as well, and yeah, how do you feel, man?
Yeah, Nero and Dusty, they made some really good points. So I'll start with Dusty. He made a very good point when he said it's a parental right. I believe it's absolutely the parent's right. No one has the right, no person in society who you are has the right to interfere with your child and your discussion with your child. Now, I have two daughters of my own. So when it comes to sex, education, I feel like puberty, is a good start because responsibility comes into play because now, they can, whatever they do at this point sexually can definitely affect their lives. So I definitely believe puberty is a good place to start talking to them because responsibility should be involved. They need to, understand what's happening to their body and what potentially could happen as far as pregnancy and whatnot. Um, as far as gender, um, I don't think I would ever bring up the talk of gender ever between my kids unless they ask. And when they do ask, I'm gonna approach it in the form of education. I'm not. I understand. It's okay to kind of like quote unquote just accept things, but I'm gonna be very specific with them. I'm gonna educate them. I'm gonna like, hey, people should be free. People should be free to do what they want as long as it doesn't infringe on others. That's how the conversation will go. Also, this can be age specific depending on what I decide to say to them, but it'll be more so in a form of education. Um, I'll give them the whole man and woman talk. You know what I mean? Like a man and a woman. A man can get pregnant. A woman and a woman cannot make it. A woman cannot make a woman pregnant. That's the kind of education I'm going to make. But I'm never someone who is misogynist or derogatory. I'm just someone who respects you, but I don't have to agree with everything that you do. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be like, oh, you should get stoned. At the end of the day, I'm going to be like, you know what? This is you. This is who you are, and I respect you for who you are. But I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what you do. So that's pretty much where my standpoint would be. That's how I would educate my kids. To be open-minded and have a debate. If they have a question, they can definitely go ahead and because I've always been asking trans people. I have encountered trans people and LGBT community, and they've never really given me maybe you could say I'm looking for more like a quality, solid information about why they're who they are. But at the end of the day, I just respect who they are, and I just keep it moving. We could hang out together. We could be like, hey, buddy, but at the end of the day, you still haven't really educated me on who you are, and it's okay. You haven't really educated me. I look at the LGBT community from more like, okay, you could be in love, definitely. Love definitely is involved, but at the end of the day, biology states that what you do doesn't really. I don't really get it, but I respect it. If that if that makes sense. So that's pretty much where I stand because I was raised on a farm. I'm from Ghana. I was raised on a farm. I was raised by my grandmother. So everything, the way I've been brought up has been conservative, and it has nothing to do with religion. I mean, I do go to church. Predominantly, I go to church to help with the instrument because I play the drums. But my views on the LGBT community and trans doesn't stem from a religious aspect. I'm just thinking. I think for myself. I'm thinking from a logical standpoint as to why this person is the way they are, and I just understand it from a sexual and happy perspective. Meaning, this is what they want to do, but is there any fact behind it? And my answer is no. It's just what they believe is something that they want to be, it's how they want to be, and I can only respect that. Although I don't accept it. So
Well,
That's awesome.
yeah, thank you for speaking your mind and giving us your opinion. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate everybody coming on tonight and telling us how you guys feel and being able to speak about something that is such a serious topic. We're going to be talking about this a little bit more because it seems to be a little bit of a hard topic where people have different opinions, which is always a good way to get into the psyche of around individuals and the way that they think and feel. And that's what the channel's all about. Right?
Yep.
And can I say something real quick? Because this is gonna maybe make them laugh a little. And by the way, I do think it's great that, like, even if you're like, hey, I don't get it, but you know what, I can respect you as an individual. That's all we can do really as humans, right? And the irony is, like, a lot of how we're raised plays a role into how we view people in the world, right? So obviously we all come at our life from our experiences and our perspectives, which is why, even though you may be thinking that towards them, it's ironic because they probably might be thinking that, like, I wonder why people are straight, you know, like, it's kind of funny if you think about it. If you were to shift the paradigm, like, on their end, they might be wondering the same thing and not get it. But if you respect each other, that's all that really matters, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's a good life. It's a good way to exist, at least in and you don't even have to respect other people, obviously, but it's just, you know, it's a more peaceful, I guess. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can understand
How-
where they're coming from. Yeah,
How did
I
you
agree.
turn your camera on without leaving the live and coming back in?
you click the co-host button, and next to your name, you'll see a microphone. To mute your microphone, you'll see a camera, and you'll see a flip camera button too.
oh, I just learned something.
Okay.
you can actually
didn't
flip the
know
camera too. Yeah, you
that's-
can actually
Okay.
flip the camera.
And there's my rare genetic thing, white coat, just to freak you out.
Okay.
So
right.
everybody, she just educated us because I didn't know how to do that at all. So now we all know we can turn on the
See,
camera.
you need us weird people around. See, you need us.
No, it's been a
If I
good
wasn't such a
conversation,
dork,
guys.
then
Good
Yeah,
point.
No, not at all. It's always good having you and everybody else on. I really appreciate having the multiple different voices and opinions that are intrigued and interested to speak with each other. It makes the conversation fluid and not just an echo chamber of people agreeing with each other. That's the way to do it, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. Have a good night, and make sure that you get some rest, and we will see you again in the future.
All right,
Yep.
no problem.
Hey,
Have a good
thanks
night.
for
Sounds
having
good.
us.
Have a good night, everybody.
Night all.
Another set of good conversations, as always. Thank you guys for coming out and speaking your mind in the chat. We're going to try to figure out a way for everybody to be able to come into the conversation so that you don't just have to have 1,000 followers. I hate the fact that TikTok does that because everybody has something to say, and you should be able to say it regardless of the individuals that are following you on a TikTok account. But with that being said, my name's Elder. This has been the Open Debate, and yeah, these are these are the questions that we had up tonight, but they always change. We're going to be talking about different things all the time. So if you have individuals that you know that are into speaking about weird things, interesting conversations, make sure that you share the live with them. Make sure that you share the channel with them. Get them influenced to get them into the chat so they can have their mind spoken. You can speak your mind if you would like. Follow the channel if you are into these sort of things. If you'd like to help support the channel monetarily, you can always set up the PayPal at Open the Debate. I appreciate everybody who has helped us, whether it's $1 or $5. It always goes a million miles, and I appreciate it a lot. Everybody who's come into the chat, I appreciate you all being here as well. And that's what makes the channel grow. Individuals being unfiltered humans speaking their minds. With that being said, my name's Elder. If you didn't know, be your own hero, kids. Going to boil some eggs.